Hey guys, this is my assignment for Dr. Shahan for this week. My name is Melanie McDaniel Sparrow, as y'all know, and my unit is going to be over the early River Valley civilizations. It's going to be on a 6th grade social studies and literacy level, and we're going to start with week 1. Let me scroll down. Okay, week 1, the standards that I have are the Arkansas Frameworks History, number 13.6.3, which is to analyze the early River Valley civilizations to determine similarities and differences using a variety of sources. And then it lists a couple of sources that I could use in my lesson plans, or I can find outside ones. And then the second one is also from the Arkansas Frameworks History. It's 13.6.4. And it's to construct arguments about characteristics necessary for a civilization using multiple sources, such as the writing, government, religion, specialization of labor, technology, economic systems, education. And you can even go into that and go into the daily lives of these people, because across the civilizations it was very different. I also included a Common Core standard on literacy, RI 6.7. And it's integrating information presented in different media forms, visually, in my case, as well as in words, to develop a coherent understanding of a topic or issue. These are just going to go by week, as you'll see through my presentation that my standards for the weekly, they keep repeating, but the objectives change slightly, and then when we get to the end, you'll understand. For my weekly objectives for week 1, students will be learning with a brief synopsis guide of the early river civilizations to help guide their learning through the unit. I think this is going to benefit them because it's going to be able to allow them to go back and say, okay, well, we're learning this about Mesopotamia. Next, we're going to learn about Egypt. Next, Indus River Valley. And if they miss class, they'll be able to catch up. Students will be able to discuss the characteristics necessary for a civilization. That's going to be something that we're going to work on. That's part of one of my lesson plans that we're going to go through. It's necessary, and it's also going to help them gain a bigger picture of why all this matters. Students will be able to see how multiple sources of information formats can benefit learning and help as an aid. And the students will be able to begin planning their unit project with their partners. I'm going to go ahead for my performance-based assessment. Students are going to work in groups. However many students are in the class, say for example we have 20, I'm going to have 5 students in each group, and each group is going to get an early river civilization. From there, the last week of class, I think I have this spent over 6 weeks, they're going to present their information either through a PowerPoint, video, whatever they choose, and it's going to be one of their summative assessments. And then for week 1, we're going to just have like a few exit slips or charts for them to fill out on characteristics of civilizations. Okay, for week 2, our first standard stays the same. I've included this one, which is from the Arkansas Frameworks 13.6.5 History. It is to compare the characteristics, contributions, and achievements of early River Valley civilizations. I have Mesopotamia bolded because that's going to be the one that we're focusing on this week as we go throughout. You'll see that every week a different one is bolded. And then the Common Core standard is still the same. For this week, students will be able to discuss the early River Valley civilization of Mesopotamia and all of its characteristics. And if you go back to the first part, such as like their writing system, government, daily lives, language, religion, and such things. Students will also begin to analyze the similarities and differences between the early River Valley civilizations. I plan on giving them like a graphic organizer that's going to have like all the headings like writing, government, all that. And they're going to fill it in as we go across each week. And that way it'll be easier for them to keep all their thoughts organized. And then students will be able to gather information from various sources for their unit project, and they will be able to see how using a variety of formats to present knowledge is a learning aid. Sorry, I'm getting choked up. I feel like this is going to be beneficial for them. I'm going to provide them time in class to work on their projects as well as outside time. That way they get done within the time frame and they're how I expect them to be. And then we're going to have a formative assessment over Mesopotamia. Week 3, my standards are still the same. This week we're focusing on Egypt. Students will be able to discuss the characteristics of Egypt as an early river civilization. Students will also be able to begin to discuss the similarities and differences between the early river civilizations, which for this week will be Mesopotamia and Egypt. And then students will be able to gather information from various sources for their unit project and will be able to see how using a variety of formats to present knowledge is a learning aid. I've thought about for my formative assessments for this would be every week we do a short quiz over just whatever civilization we're talking about, as well as having like daily things. Like I found a crossword puzzle that I think would be really interesting for students to complete. Week 4, standards still the same, except this week we're focusing on the Indus River Valley. The objectives, students will be able to discuss the characteristics of the Indus River Valley as an early river civilization. They'll be able to discuss the similarities and differences between Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus River Valley. And they'll be able to gather information from various sources for their unit project and be able to see how using a variety of formats to present knowledge is a learning aid. And then for my assessments, we'll have, quizzes and worksheets and things over the Indus River Valley. I plan on including like videos and just short little tidbits, maybe games on a smart board for students to do weekly in class as well. And then for week 5, again, standards still the same, except this week we're focusing on China. It's the last of the River Valley civilizations. Students will be able to discuss the characteristics of China as an early river civilization. They'll be able to discuss similarities and differences between each civilization. And they'll be able to gather information for their unit project and see how using a variety of formats is a learning aid. And then we'll have our little assessment over China. And then week 6. Week 6 is where I plan on the students having time to present their lessons to me, their unit projects. In my head, I pictured this as like a 3-day course. When I went to school, we had block scheduling, A days, B days. And so that's why it's kind of spread out like this. That's just how I pictured it in my head. If I needed to modify it for an everyday class, it would be really easy to do. I'm going to be working on Common Core standards. The first one is Literacy W.6.7, which is to conduct short research projects to answer a question, drawing on several sources and refocusing the inquiry when appropriate. Literacy SL.6.4, present claims and findings, sequencing ideas logically, and using pertinent descriptions, facts, and details to accentuate main ideas or themes, using appropriate eye contact, adequate volume, and clear pronunciation. The first 2 standards are going to go with their project. They're going to be discussed in the rubric. And then RI 6.7, which you've seen before in my earlier presentation, saying that they need to integrate information presented in different media formats, visually as well as in words, to develop a coherent understanding of a topic or issue. Our weekly objectives for this week are students will present their unit projects with their partners to demonstrate their learning over the early river civilizations, as well as they will be able to use technology and other forms of sources to gather information and create presentations to demonstrate the knowledge of a subject. My assessments for this week, that's when they're going to have their performance-based tasks, but also I haven't decided if I want them to do this like at the end of the week or at the beginning, but whichever one. On the other days, we're going to play Jeopardy over the early river civilizations for review, and that's my game. And I think that'll just help the students, continue on in their knowledge growth. And then for my lesson plan, for my first lesson plan, I'm going to cover basically week 1 standards. Students will be able to list and discuss the basic characteristics of civilizations. Students will be able to know the criteria and overview of their research-based projects. And students will be able to have a guide for their learning throughout the unit. Here I plan on having the graphic organizer for them to fill out, but I also plan on having outlines for the unit for the students to go by, and we're going to fill those in as we progress throughout the weeks. And then for my lesson plan 2, I'm going to focus on the standards for week 3. And our objectives will be that students will begin to learn about Egypt as an early river civilization, and they will be able to discuss the basic characteristics, which is writing, government, religion, daily life, so on. And they will also be able to identify geographical locations pertaining to Egypt. And I think this will be a very fun lesson, and I hope y'all enjoyed it. Thank you.